You ever been in a situation like me where you get to the end of watching whatever it is that you're binging at that point in time and you think, what the heck do I watch next? Today, I've decided to come to you with a different type of video. I'm going to talk to you about 10 TV shows that I know like the back of my hand that I want to recommend to you. So yes, I have been thinking of branching out on my channel, and this is my first look at TV shows and recommending them. For this video, I decided to come up with 10 TV shows that I've watched so many times that I can probably quote the entire series. To qualify for this list, it needs to be a series that is over. So if it's a series that's currently airing that I love, it wasn't allowed to make this list. I do have a couple of different genres and even a kids show put in place there for any of you who want to see something a little more from the children's range. Let's begin. This is in no particular order. I love all these shows the same amount, and on any day if I was bored or didn't have anything to watch, I would gladly watch any of these and be put in a good mood for varying reasons. So the first show I'm going to talk to you about is The Nanny. Okay, so what is the basic setup of The Nanny? We follow Fran Drescher, who plays the role of Fran Fine, a nanny from New York, well, Flushing Meadows, New York, anyway, who arrives at the door of a widowed man, Maxwell Sheffield, and his 3 children. She is there going door to door selling cosmetics, but when she arrives, the butler, Niles, mistakes her as being there to be interviewed for the role of the new nanny for this widow whose name is Maxwell Sheffield, his children. Well, Fran ultimately ends up getting the role of being the nanny, and an amazing comedy ensues, whether it be the amazing back and forth between Fran and Niles, Niles and Cece, Niles and Mr. Sheffield, Fran and Mr. Sheffield. The laughs are a million a minute, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this show. The next show that I want to recommend to you is also a comedy, and that is Will and Grace. I have been very hard-pressed to find anything like Will and Grace. So the basic setup for this show is that we follow 2 protagonists, one who is a gay man and the other who is a straight woman. The gay man that we follow, his name is Will Truman. The straight woman that we follow, her name is Grace Adler. And they have an amazing friendship, as close a friendship as any gay man and straight woman can have. Bring into the mix the straight woman Grace Adler's office assistant, Karen Walker, who would much prefer spending her days drinking away than actually getting paid, and she is rich enough to stuff checks into the drawer rather than actually deposit them, alongside Will's dear friend who is a flamboyant gay guy, Jack McFarland, and you're in for a recipe that is just an absolute treat. I think this is fantastic. Not only is it fantastic that Max Mushnick and his partner, who I forgot the name of the co-creator, brought out this show so that we can have a fun gay show that is out there that I have yet to come across since then, but it also became rather informative, especially with its reboot. However, if you are going to step into watching this show for the first time, I recommend beginning at the beginning of this series. Start with season 1 and work your way through, and then watch the reboot if you are so inclined. It's a fantastic show and so hilarious, especially every single time Karen Walker walks into the room. High props for Megan Mullally. Next up is a drama, and continuing on with the gay theme, we have Queer as Folk. This is a very interesting show, and it was certainly groundbreaking for the time. Set in the US, this is a show that was based on a show by the same name that was created in the UK that wasn't anywhere near as successful. That show lasting 3 seasons, and I think the US edition lasted 5 or 6, don't quote me, but somewhere around there, so about double the amount of time. So the basic setup for this show is, at the beginning, we're following a young boy by the name of Justin who ends up going out to a gay club. While he is there, he falls head over heels in love with this older guy whose name is Brian Kinney, and along the way, Justin becomes ingrained into this circle that Brian Kinney has around him of gay men and lesbian women. One of the greatest things about this show is that it was just so different for the time. It was so groundbreaking. It broke down so many walls. Any type of a gay issue that came up at the time that may have been considered taboo, Queer as Folk weren't afraid to go there. I wish that there was a streaming platform here in this country that actually had the US edition of Queer as Folk. I've searched searched high and low and cannot find it anywhere. But I think it is absolutely amazing. And if you want to watch the single most groundbreaking LGBTIQ plus show for its time, I do highly recommend it. I do need to warn you though, incredibly graphic sex scenes are shown in this show, so if that's something that doesn't take your interest, then either feel free to skip this one or skip ahead when those scenes do come up. But any sort of social issue that may come up to do with the LGBTIQ plus community of the time does come up in the show. They aren't afraid to go there, and I highly recommend it. Next up, I'm going to talk to you about Charmed. Now, I am not, and I need you to hear this, I am not talking about the reboot because I was not a fan of that. I am talking your OG Charmed. So the backstory of this amazingly incredible series is that we follow three sisters. Now, in the beginning, we follow Phoebe, Piper, and Prue. Prue is the eldest sister, Piper the middle sister, and Phoebe the youngest sister. One night, to cut a long story short, the three sisters find out that they are actually born good witches, and by the end of the pilot episode discover that there was actually a destiny created for the three of them. They are the Charmed Ones, otherwise known as the Power of Three, who are the greatest force of good the world has ever seen when they come together. So a lot of the first season is them trying to learn the ropes about what it means to be good and battling the forces of evil, and then a lot of other things do prop up in seasons as we do go along outside of the magic as well. They were very much aware of the fact that they wanted to create a show that wasn't about witches that happen to be sisters, but sisters who just so happen to be witches. So there is a fair amount of not only fantasy, but also situations that might pop up in real life. Like, how would things go if you're trying to have a baby and that doesn't work out for you? How would things go if you've been burned by love in the past and a love is coming along now? And different other things along the way as well. Now, I will, without saying a name, let you know that by the end of the third season, one of the sisters does die, so they need to get replaced, and ultimately that does happen in season 4. But in saying that, the entire series is absolutely amazing, and I can't think of an episode of this series that I did not love, and any opportunity that I have to go back to watch Charmed, I absolutely do. If you are a fan of fantasy and haven't watched Charmed before, it is an amazing show that certainly would have won a lot more awards, in my opinion, if Buffy the Vampire Slayer didn't come out at the exact same time. Highly recommend checking out Charmed. The next show I'm going to talk to you about is considered to be a comedy drama, and I'm talking about Gilmore Girls. Oh my gosh, if ever there was a cozy show that was turned into a TV show, it is Gilmore Girls. Set in the small town of Stars Hollow, New Haven, we follow a single mother, Lorelai, and her daughter, Rory. The basic setup for this show is that when Rory was quite young, her father, Lorelai's partner at the time, left them, and so left Lorelai to raise Rory on her own. But rather than that causing issues, it actually allowed the two of them to bond into such a close relationship that ends up becoming classically beautiful. On top of that, we have a bit of drama on the side with Lorelai's parents not being so happy that Lorelai got pregnant with Rory at a very young age. Very early on in the series, in season 1 in fact, Lorelai ends up having a discussion with her parents because her daughter is smart enough to go to a private school, but they don't have the money for it. When Lorelai became pregnant, her rich parents kicked her out and wanted nothing to do with her, so Lorelai had to work from the ground up to support herself. She asks her rich parents to support Rory so that she can go to school, and the parents say to her, "We will do it provided you come to Friday night dinners every single Friday from here on out until the debt is repaid," which sets up for an amazingly hilarious time, not only with the parents and the dynamics between Lorelai's parents and Rory's grandparents when they are there for Friday night dinners, but all the other characters that are there in the small town of Stars Hollow. If you have not watched this series, I highly recommend it. It is so much fun. If you're looking to get away from drama and just watch something fun, Gilmore Girls is definitely the cozy way to go. Next up, I'm going to recommend a show that came out for me at just the right time. Have you ever seen those Legally Blonde movies, which, by the way, I'm still waiting for Legally Blonde number 3 to come out? It'll happen, I know it will, but in the meantime, after watching Legally Blonde 1 and 2, I loved the film so much and wished that there would be a TV show that would come out just like Legally Blonde. Well, apparently I wasn't alone, and so was born a show that you may not have heard of before called Drop Dead Diva. Now, the premise of this show is that we follow an aspiring model whose name is Deb. In the pilot episode, this blonde, thin woman is going to go for an audition to be a model on The Price is Right. On the way there, she is distracted while driving and she smashes into a fruit truck and dies. At the same time, a plus-sized lawyer is shot, so they both die at the same time. When the model goes up to heaven, she ends up pressing the return button, and so she comes back, but she comes back in the body of the attorney. Now she is the model in the body of the plus-sized attorney with the plus-sized attorney's mind. And as the intro says, so now I'm Jane, a super busy lawyer with my very own assistant. I used to think everything happened for a reason. Well, I hope I was right. So Deb, the model, now known as Jane, has to now live Jane's life, despite knowing nothing about the law. But what comes with Jane's body is her incredible mind. And the only people who know what's really going on with her are her guardian angel Fred, who she pressed the enter button in front of, and her best friend Stacy. It is a fantastic show. It's seriously very much like Legally Blonde 1, in that we're following Elle Woods, who is this really happy, joyful, positive character who studies law, but in this case, imagine Elle Woods having graduated and being a full-time attorney. That's exactly what you get with Deb, who is now Jane. She is extremely happy, bubbly, very extremely positive, parades herself around as though she is a model, and she just so happens to be a lawyer. It is fantastic, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. The next show that I highly recommend is a show that only lasted 1 season, and one day I'm going to do a video about shows that didn't last anywhere near as long as they should have, creating what I am penning as the Francois curse, because anytime I watch a show that I love, it generally doesn't tend to go on that long, this one only lasting 1 season, and I still don't understand why. It is called Valentine Inc. Now, I need to be very specific there, because if you type in Valentine, you'll come up with a completely different thing that's a movie. You need to type in Valentine Inc, I-N-C. So the basic setup of this show is that we are following the goddess Aphrodite and her son, who are at risk of becoming mortal. And the reason for this is because people are not believing in gods and goddesses as they once did. The only way to have people believe once again is that every single week, Aphrodite and her son Eros and a couple of other people who live in their home, and a human that they end up recruiting in the first episode, who we kind of watch things through her eyes, end up setting people up. They find out at the beginning of every single episode of two people who are destined to fall in love, but if certain situations don't take place, then they won't actually have that opportunity. So it falls on to Aphrodite and Eros and this human that they hire to ensure that these people do actually end up getting together. As is said in the intro, sometimes fate needs a helping hand. If you are someone who believes in love and loves lovey-dovey type things, you will not help but fall in love with this series that, as I say, only lasted 1 season, and I still don't get why. Jamie Murray is fantastic taking on the role of Aphrodite, as are the rest of the characters. Highly, highly, highly recommend Valentine Inc. The next show I'm going to recommend to you, speaking of things that come with a bit of a fantasy flair, I'm going to talk to you about The Good Place. Oh my goodness, do I love, love, love The Good Place. Now, opinion is divided as we go season by season throughout this series, but a lot of people agree that season 1 of The Good Place is fantastic. So we predominantly follow a main character, but there are supporting casts around the main character, and the main character character. Her name is Eleanor Shellstrop. Eleanor is a horrible human being. She couldn't be any more selfish if she tried. One day, whilst at the supermarket parking lot, she dies and wakes up and is advised that she has made it to the good place. She's in the good place. Yay! Fantastic. Congratulations. Alongside her, we meet some other characters such as Chidi, who is a self-proclaimed nerd. We also meet Tahani, who was an Indian socialite, and we meet Jason, who is a Buddhist monk. However, there is more to all of them than meets the eye, and one thing that's on Eleanor Shellstrop's mind is, how the heck did I make it to heaven? It does not make sense. How am I in the good place? Well, there is more going on here than meets the eye. I have to say, the cast that they hired for this series do an amazing job. And the woman who plays Tahani, this is actually her first acting role. You would not know it. I absolutely love her. The show is just incredible, and I highly recommend it if you have not seen it before. The next show I'm going to recommend to you is the children's show, and that is The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Have you ever had a moment where you're sick of watching violence, you're sick of watching adult themes, and you just want to watch something that is sweet, loving, and not at all in any way, shape, or form adult? Well, let me tell you, The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh has you covered. So this is a TV series that is based on the original works, Winnie the Pooh, originally written as a novel by A.A. Milne and then turned into a film, and then another bunch of films came out as well, but this was the TV series of it. So we follow Pooh, who is a bear, Rabbit, who is a rabbit, Tigger, who is a tiger, Piglet, who is a tiny pig, and Eeyore, who is a donkey, and other characters along the way in the 100-Acre Wood. And every single episode, which I think goes for about 15-20 minutes, they all go on one adventure or another. It is just absolutely adorable. Every single episode is adorable in that they all come into these situations, and it is their friendship that helps them to get through whatever it is that is thrown their way. If you can get the opportunity to watch any episode of The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, I highly recommend it, because it is a great way to refresh, especially for someone like me who likes all different genres when it comes to TV shows, whether it be action, horror, thrillers, romance, comedy, whatever, and you just want something that's a children's, something to refresh. Winnie the Pooh is the way to go. And plus, if you've been watching some scary movies and you can't fall asleep, this is the way to go. Watch Winnie the Pooh. It always turns things around for me. Just very quickly on a side note, I find if I watch a lot of scary movies before I go to bed, I might be a bit scared to fall asleep. Then I watch a few episodes of Winnie the Pooh, and I tell you, I'm in the best frame of mind to fall asleep. But even if you don't watch scary movies, Winnie the Pooh is just a fantastic time, because it is just such a beautiful, loving series about these friends who are always there for each other, and it's lovely. I highly recommend. The final show I'm going to recommend to you, I am under the opinion that it has been cancelled. If it hasn't, then I apologize in advance, because all of the sources out there are saying this show is done. But if it's not, there you go. I'm sorry, but I just don't see it returning. And that is predominantly because the latest season of this show was a massive, unanimously determined to be a massive flop. And that is a reality TV series. So, if you live in America or other areas around the world, you may have heard of the Real Housewives franchise. I'm going to recommend the Australian one that dominated TV screens for a very long time, and that is the Real Housewives of Melbourne. Now, it is very different to the American series, although the basic premise is the same. We follow these housewives who are socialites, who go off and do this, that, the other. There's drama, yada. But I have to say, after watching every single episode of The Real Housewives of Melbourne and then watching The Real Housewives of New Jersey, I have to say that Melbourne is nowhere near as dramatic as The Real Housewives of New Jersey. But in saying that, it is still a fun time. We follow all these different character types, if you will, as housewives. In the very first season, we follow someone who loves cooking. We follow a barrister who is hilarious, by the way. We follow a psychic. We follow a a gardener. We follow a plastic surgeon, and the other one is I think she's an interior decorator or something like that. Anyway, yeah, creates for a fantastic time. Now, the latest season, which I think was season 5 or 6, one of the two, was an absolute flop. And the reason for that, if you've watched any of the other Housewives franchises, you might have experienced this yourself, is that half the cast had left. The original cast had left by the time we got to that season, and the new cast just did not fill their shoes at all. And so therefore, unfortunately, it seems that Arena and Foxtel over here in Australia, Matchbox being the overall company, but the company on TV, Foxtel's Arena, decided to cancel the show because it wasn't rating as well. But the rest of the seasons leading up to it are fantastic. One of the things I love about Real Housewives of Melbourne, or any Real Housewives really that I've seen so far, but certainly with Melbourne, is any time that I've had a bad day and I just want to get distracted, any of the dramas going on in the Real Housewives of Melbourne certainly serve as a fantastic distraction from me, because I get to focus on their drama rather than anything that's going on with me, which works really, really well. So there you go. Let's go through those shows one more time. So the shows I recommended for you were The Nanny, Will and Grace, Queer as Folk, Charmed, Gilmore Girls, Drop Dead Diva, Valentine Inc, The Good Place, The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and The Real Housewives of Melbourne. Have you seen any of these shows? If you have, let me know in the comments section below. And if you have any recommendations for me to do with whether it be TV or movies or something like that, please do not hesitate to let me know in the comments section below. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another, and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy watching. Bye, everyone.